The newspaper headline this morning says, "Stormy winter session ends with dismal output." Now, stormy winter session, that's a euphemism for what happened. What really happened was that people shouted at each other for absolutely no reason, and then ended up even displaying himsa of the highest order outside Parliament immediately. So the himsa was complete. Inside the house there was himsa of thought and word, and outside there was a lot of shoving and pushing around and all that sort of thing, ending up in some police cases and all that. And they showed that himsa had been completed by a himsa of deed. Now, what was this all about? What should have been the real purpose of the discussion? Let me state that first. The purpose of any discussion which is there for reviewing or discussing 75 years of the Indian Constitution definitely goes to a basic question. What was intended by the framers of the Constitution, if you like, but really that it's put in a very correct way. What did we want? We, the people of India, resolved to secure something. And those were written all in pretty simple words. We resolved to secure to all its citizens justice, social justice, economic and political. Economic justice, political justice. And of course, liberty of thought, expression, belief and all that. Without that liberty of thought and expression, I wouldn't be able to speak like this, because the moment I opened my mouth, somebody would grab me and put me in prison. But this is a democracy. And more than that, a constitution which declares all these things there. This would have been a magnificent opportunity to review these things and see by actual events and legislation and statistics what progress we made in these 75 years on social justice, economic justice, political justice, giving those words flesh by looking at what has happened, not in that kind of emotional slogan shouting sense, but looking at the work done over these 75 years. And indeed there has been work, but there's plenty more to do. That too is pretty evident. Anyone who walks the streets, there is poverty and penury and homelessness and those on the pavement, and a lot of things like that. I mean, plenty. I'm just giving you a picture of just one thing, okay? There are lots of others, because it also lots of other points, because you have got this thing, liberty of thought, belief, expression, all these things. So it would have been a very good opportunity, a very good occasion for both the government and the opposition thinking of this thing, not in terms of exchanging blows or say calling names, which is what they did, but of asking our nation, our country, what have we done? The government could come up with some achievements, that's okay. But it is a review of 75 years. Both could participate in it without this adversarial side. It was not merely adversarial, it was enmity. It was vilification that happened. So this was not done. What do you say of that? We, the people of India, are looking at this and saying, these are the people whom we elected. What are they doing? What's going on? This is very much staring in the face when you finally, after all this kind of inane thing, and I'll come to that later, in a minute, they end up pushing each other and shoving each other and making a spectacle of themselves. So we have a right to ask this question with disappointment, with sadness, that after 75 years, this is the level to which we have come. Look at the debates in the Constituent Assembly, which was the maker of the Constitution, which was tasked only with the purpose of making the Constitution, which is called the first Parliament, because it is only elected people who came in there. And there were, of course, nominated people too, to see that the representation was wide and just. And the people who were there in the Constituent Assembly were filled with this feeling of the great task of making the Constitution. I say this because the constitutional debates over about a year and the proceedings running to thousands and thousands of pages demonstrate, if at all it is needed, how every aspect, every single aspect of our national life and our objectives and everything that went into the Constitution was debated and put in resolutions. To give you an idea of the kind of people there were, of course, there was Dr. Rajendra Prasad, Jawaharlal Nehru, Gopala Swami Iyengar, Alladi Krishna Swami Iyer, Govind Vallabh Pant. People of all shades and all opinions were also there. K. Munshi, plenty of big people, and you will find them really working very hard. If you read the debates, you will find that they put their heart and soul in those debates. They really gave some substance and flesh to a lot of ideas that were floating around. That was a magnificent act in the whole thing of how a constitution should take shape. Really, you will really feel inspired by the way they put in so much work over a year. From that level, from where we started in 1948, 49, because work was done by November of 1949. From that level, if you look at it, you will find from that level, after 75 years, we have fallen to this level. It brings many thoughts to you, to a concerned citizen. Leave that there because this is very painful. 75 years and this is the level of discussion. You started with this. Go through the proceedings. There's so much of knowledge, commitment, decency, everything, every possible thing of persons imbued with ideas of how their nation should be and what we should aspire for. So that's the terrible, terrible come down, like what Shakespeare would say, what a fall was there. What a fall was there, my countrymen. That happened, that has happened. Now, let me go to something which really was the subject of all this shouting. I hate to use words of a coarse nature, but that's what is deserving of this shouting. The government side minister made some kind of a innocuous statement on this chanting of Ambedkar's name, Ambedkar, Ambedkar, and so on. Immediately they jumped up. You are denigrating him. We respect him as the greatest man, or even we revere him, says the other side. We respect him, not respect him, but revere him, and so on. And all kinds of words were exchanged on Ambedkar, and words that were specifically like this, we consider him equivalent to God. The moment you think somebody is equivalent to God, you have kind of finished him as a man and as a human being. Done, over. Because he has been put on a pedestal, God. There is no way in which you can look at him and his suffering as a human being. He is God, finished. So, and this is exactly what he said we shouldn't do. Don't hero worship. Man, that's the proceedings. That's the proceedings. In the concluding session of this Constituent Assembly. Concluding session. It's about 1947, 48. No, it should be about nearer 49. That is the concluding session. It's all there because in the concluding session, the Constitution was all done, and it has to be officially passed and presented and all that to do the President of the Constituent Assembly, Dr. Rajendra Prasad. This was it. So you went specifically against that as a man. Worse, by 1956 he had become a Buddhist because he had suffered enough of caste discrimination. He had known what untouchable was, and he's written many, many books on this. He had a doctorate from University of Columbia. He had a doctorate from the London School of Economics, brilliant papers and so on. But he came back, and this is what his concern was, of what were called untouchables and the oppression that they suffered. And of course, he had some very harsh words about Hinduism and Manusmriti. That's his life. All this is recorded, and all this is there. I'm not taking any particular radical view or anything like that. Not. So, this is a man who suffered indignities as a student, He has recorded that. No water, no pune. No pune, no water. no pune, no water. And because the pune was the person who was pouring the water, because he is an untouchable, he can't touch water. He was pouring the water like this, and what did the pune was not there, and he had no water. So he recalled that, and he said, no pune, no water. Plenty of things like that. So he's a man who went through all this thing. Now, it must be remembered that we talk in a very loose sense. I do not know how it all happened, of Dr. Ambedkar as the architect of the Constitution. Somebody has even said about he is the father of the Constitution. Now, the Constitution was, first of all, if ever there is a father of the Constitution or the maker of the Constitution, it's the Constituent Assembly. Because the Constituent Assembly debated, worked on all the things that are going to go into the draft of the Constitution. The drafting committee of the Constitution, of which Dr. Ambedkar was the chairman, the drafting committee couldn't do anything beyond what was discussed, debated, and passed. Please also remember that in the Constituent Assembly there was Dr. Ambedkar, and he was a moving spirit in that Constituent Assembly. He brought all his terrible and painful experiences in formulating ideas in the Constituent Assembly. These were not just, brash people who had no experience at all. These people had experience. If Dr. Ambedkar went through all his painful experiences in his childhood and his youth, all the others too brought in their experience, their knowledge in various fields, other fields, whether it is government administration or whether it is any particular branch. Say law, there were plenty of lawyers there. They brought a lot of experience, and all the debates are rich with ideas and formulation of ideas. So there is this question when you overplay this the thing about Ambedkar being the architect of the Constitution, the architect, the father, you mean only one. It is not so. It's not because I say it. It is because Dr. Ambedkar himself has, like any decent man would, because it's a work of about, as I said, the Constituent Assembly consisted of about 299 persons, and they all contributed to the fleshing out of ideas. The drafting committee was a committee where B.N. Rao was a very important figure. B.N. Rao had already made a draft of the Constitution. And Dr. Ambedkar, in the concluding session of the Constituent Assembly, which among other things he said, all these other things which I spoke about, he said, many people credit me with the making of the Constitution. If ever any credit is due to anyone, it has to be B.N. Rao. B.N. Rao, of course, was a great legal luminary and all that. That's from Mangalore. All his brothers were also big people, B. Raja Rao, Shiva Rao, B. Shiva Rao, and all that. If you look at it, you will find that about B.N. Rao, Benegal Narsingh Rao. So a lot of this drafting was done by B.N. Rao. Dr. Ambedkar specifically also said this is the work of the drafting of S.N. Mukherjee. He had a team of others. Therefore, you have the 299 Constituent Assembly members who were giving their heart and soul to bringing some amount of flesh, some amount of specific things to various ideas. And there was the 7-member drafting committee, which was again taken from the Constituent Assembly, consisting of Ladi Krishnaswamy Iyer, Parthasari, Gopal Swami Iyengar, and a whole lot of others. Finally, even T.T. Krishnamacharya. So they were the drafting committee, and it was chaired by Dr. Ambedkar. Oh, of course, his work as chairman of the drafting committee is there in his history. Nobody need put some kind of halo around him and make him a god and all that. That's not done. That's not done. So it's all there in history. You can read it and see what he did. There are records. There are his speeches. So that's what it is. So that is the point, that calling him the architect, the father of the Constitution, is not factual. And most of all, if he were to come and hear all this, he would be shocked beyond measure. I mean, he would be hurt also, because he was a very honest and good man. Okay, that is a different thing. I mean, you have to go into the life of Dr. Ambedkar to know what he is. Just saying that by 1956 he had become a Buddhist, and there are 22 principles of that he asked his followers to sign. They were all converted to Buddhism, about 4 lakhs of people in Nagpur. There are 22 principles. Just read the 22 principles and see if any principle there gels or ties up with this worshipping. Just see. I ask anyone, even if you don't find the time and don't have the inclination to go through all the constitutional debates, at least see what this man is, because you have made him a god. Just see 22 principles of Ambedkar. He asked his followers to sign them. So that's what it is. So all that I can say at this time is that we cannot be despondent despite all this. We will have to hope that these parliamentarians will know what their game is about. I've already said in the previous video that you have to spend time studying things. That a parliamentarian does not mean just letting off hot air and just making speeches all around. It doesn't mean that at all. The Westminster model of government, which anyway we adopted as our own, or we took as our own, definitely their model of governance is based on working in the committees, working all the ways, not just making speeches. There may be prime minister's hour and all that, if you care to listen. Is tremendously one of civility. No shouting at all. And occasionally there might be a little bit here and there, but civility and talk. So we can only hope that this thing does not recur, that parliamentarians more than anything else understand what they have to do, less of this kind of speech making, which is not getting us anywhere. The speech and this getting very much excited by the use of words, that doesn't get us anywhere. So I hope all this will change. As a citizen, as one among we the people, I hope things will be better, because we cannot afford to be despondent. We cannot despair. We have to hope for better things. Take care.